Hey everyone, we're going to keep going on World War One today. I was looking at my bookshelf and I found another good book if you're interested. One is called The First World War by A. J. P. Taylor. It's a quick read, so if you would like something more to read but don't want something that's going to take a long time, this is a good book to read. It's also got a lot of pictures, which that's good. I want to continue on the causes of World War One. So today I kind of want to talk about the military plans of all the countries, and then we'll get to the actual assassination that sparks the war. Okay, so this guy named Alfred von Schlieffen, he's the chief of the German General Staff prior to World War One. His military plan, known as the Schlieffen Plan, this kind of guides German policy when the war breaks out. The heart of France lies between Brussels and Paris. That was an old kind of saying by Karl von Clausewitz, a really famous German military thinker. The quickest way to defeat France is to go through Belgium. There's just one problem with that. Germany had agreed to respect Belgian neutrality. There was a treaty signed in London in the 1830s, and it guaranteed Belgian's neutrality. So Germany cannot invade France through Belgium without violating this treaty. So Germany's going to have to think of something else. There were a couple of military thinkers, Helmuth von Moltke the Elder and Alfred von Waldersee. They were in charge of the German military kind of in the late 1800s. They are thinking, how can Germany deal with the two-front war? You know, if we do have to fight France and Russia, what can we do to be victorious in that war? Basically, what they thought is, let's go on the defensive against France. There's a bunch of fortifications between Germany and France. Going on the offensive is difficult. Let's be on the defensive, and we'll go on the offensive against the Russians. We can defeat them. They're kind of a backwards, not very industrialized country. That's how we'll win this war. Well, Moltke and Waldersee based their military plans off of Germany's diplomatic beliefs. Bismarck said, don't threaten Europe. So if you invade a neutral country, you're going to threaten Europe. Von Schlieffen is different. He only considers military realities when he's talking about how to win a war. So he changes the German plan and he decides to go on the defense against Russia, go on the offense against France. And here's the reason why. The last war that the Germans and the French fought, the Franco-Prussian War, the Germans easily won. They won very quickly. He thinks they can defeat France within 42 days and then go attack the Russians. The Russians are often called the steamroller of Europe. They're powerful. They have millions of men. They have millions of men in reserve, but it takes them forever to get ready to fight. It's a huge country geographically. It takes forever to get them in there. So von Schlieffen thinks he can defeat France before Russia's even ready to fight, and then he'll go back east and defeat the Russians. So it's kind of beat the French, beat the Russians. England is kind of a wild card in this. We don't know what England will do. They don't have to get involved in a war on the continent. But if Belgian neutrality is threatened, they probably will because they guaranteed Belgian neutrality. So if Schlieffen invades France through Belgium, he's kind of taking the risk that might get Great Britain into the war. The key to Schlieffen's plan is speed. He has to defeat France within 42 days before the Russians are ready. If he gets stuck fighting the French, not being able to defeat them, and then he still has to go take on the Russians, he's in trouble. So basically, speed is everything to Schlieffen. You've got to defeat France within 42 days. So basically what that means is you have to invade through Belgium. To invade with a large enough force means you have to have enough room for your armies to maneuver, so they have to go through Belgium. He had this saying, when you march into France, let the last man on the right brush the channel with his sleeve. So that's how wide the armies had to go. You can kind of see on the map there. The right wing of the Schlieffen Plan is that's the key that holds everything together. And Schlieffen thought, you know what, when France and Germany go to war, Belgian neutrality is going to be broken by somebody. It might as well be us. Now, the French are a lot different. The French are like, yes, we know Belgian neutrality will be broken, but let's let the Germans break it, and then that'll get the British in on our side. So the French were thinking not just in military terms, whereas the Germans were. Okay. The Kaiser had talked to the kings of Belgium. He talked to Leopold II. He talked to Albert. He basically said, you know, when war comes, I need your country to march through. So we'll kind of see here what the Belgians end up doing. If you look at slide 113, Belgium doesn't have very many divisions. Germany could easily crush Belgium. So that's why the Germans think the Belgians will just kind of step aside. They don't think they'll put up a strong fight. If you look at slide 114, that's some of Schlieffen's fears. So these are some things that could go wrong with the Schlieffen Plan. You don't have to know those, but I just put them in there so you could kind of see his thinking. Schlieffen said Belgium must be confronted prior to invasion by an ultimatum requiring her to yield all her fortresses, railway, and troops, or face bombardment of her fortified cities. Now, Schlieffen dies before World War I breaks out, but that's the plan the Germans are going to use. So, slide 118, I kind of got a summary of the Schlieffen Plan. 42 days, you got to defeat France within 42 days. Okay. One of the problems that historians since World War I have kind of looked at is Helmuth von Moltke the Younger. He's the guy that is in charge when the war starts. Every year he takes a little bit of strength away from the German right wing and reinforces the center and the left wing, which, you know, Schlieffen's whole plan was the right wing has to crush all opposition. So some people think Moltke messed up the Schlieffen Plan. Okay, slide 124. Austria also has to fight a two-front war against Russia and Serbia. Basically, they've got these things called, or their divisions. You can see the writing there on slide 125. They've got 30 divisions that are going to attack the Russians. They got 10 divisions that are going to attack the Serbians. And then they've got a swing force of 12 divisions. You know, maybe the war against Serbia is going really well, so those 12 divisions can go fight the Russians or vice versa. The Germans want the Austrians to focus on the Russians because the Russians are what make the Germans scared. So yeah, we won't worry too much about Austria. Now I want to talk about France's military plans. So I'm on slide 127. So you know the Franco-Prussian War, France is humiliated. France loses territory. France has to pay an indemnity to Germany. The German army was in Paris. Germany never forgets this war, and they always want their chance to redeem themselves. So I'm skipping over some of these slides, like the Zabern affair. Basically, that was just the Germans and the French kind of being idiots towards each other. You don't have to remember that. But France in the 1870s focuses on a fortress strategy. If you look at slide 134, they've got a lot of fortifications along their border with Germany, which makes sense. If Germany's gonna invade, you want to protect yourself. France goes through a series of plans, Plan 14 all the way to Plan 16. Plan 17 is what the French end up sticking with. It just requires the spirited offensive across the Franco-German border. It's kind of weird to think about, but French military thinking at this time was, if we have the greatest, most patriotic spirit, that's all we need to carry us to victory. They had this thing called Elan Vital, the all-conquering will, the doctrine of the offensive. France decides we're just going to go for it. Which, you know, when you're going up against industrialized weapons, machine guns, artillery, it doesn't matter how much patriotism or spirit you have, those things won't save you. I've got some quotes on slides 140, 141, and 142 that kind of show you how the French thought offensively and how they thought this spirit would just carry them to victory. There was one guy, General Victor Michel. He attempts to basically get France to think defensive, but he's kind of ousted. He wanted to protect from an invasion through Belgium, but nobody listens to him, so he kind of gets looked over. If you look at slide 147, it kind of shows you the direction the French will go. Okay, Russian military plans. I'm not going to spend much time on this. Russia is a huge steamroller. It's big, powerful, but slow to act. So basically, once they get in the fight, they're a force to be reckoned with, but until then, you don't have to worry about them. You can kind of click through the Russian slides. I don't really want you to know anymore other than just they're the steamroller. It just takes them a while to get going, but once they do get going, they have so many men, it'll throw a monkey wrench in the German plans. The Russians want to invade East Prussia, which is, in eastern Germany. Prussia is that's kind of like the heartland of Germany. That's where all the nobles come from. So that's kind of where the Russians want to invade. Okay, Great Britain, I'll just talk about them quickly. Great Britain engaged in something called spirited isolationism. They could ignore continental Europe or get involved when it suited their national interest. They don't have to get involved. Just like the Napoleonic Wars, they didn't have to get involved, but they did. So if Germany, France, Russia, some other countries go to war, Great Britain can stay out of it if they want to. Great Britain and France have had issues with each other in the past over colonial differences, basically in Africa. But basically, here's what ends up happening. Great Britain fears an all-powerful Germany. Just like in the Napoleonic Wars, France got too powerful and dominated Europe. The British are worried that the Germans are going to do the same thing. So I think that kind of pulls the British in. We don't want Germany to be too powerful. They'll rule the continent. Napoleon enacted the continental system against us. What if the Germans do something similar? So it's in our interest as the British nation to make sure nobody on the continent is too powerful. In 1904, the British and the French signed the Entente Cordiale. It's not a military alliance, but it's a military understanding or agreement. You can kind of think of it as, like if war does break out, we're probably going to support each other. I got some more stuff on England, but I kind of said everything I want to say, so you can scroll through those, but it's not necessary to talk about. Sorry, my slideshow is kind of pausing when I click the next slide. There is this funny story. When the British and the French are talking military strategy, the British are kind of thinking, okay, France, if we do send you troops to help, how many do you want? So this guy, Sir Henry Wilson, says, what is the smallest British military force that would be of any practical assistance to you? And Ferdinand Foch, the French guy, he says, I want a single British soldier, and we will see to it that he is killed. So give us one British soldier, we'll get him killed in battle, and then the whole nation of England will be incensed and they'll join our cause. So kind of funny, but kind of morbid in the same way. Okay, sorry, I'm clicking through my slides. They're taking forever. The British do come up with this kind of naval understanding with the French. The British will protect the English Channel and the French coast, and the French fleet can patrol the Mediterranean. Okay, let's talk about the assassination that ignites this war. It happens in the Balkans. It happens because of stuff Austria is doing. Bosnia-Herzegovina is annexed by Austria in 1908. The Serbs wanted this piece of land. There's a lot of Serbs living there, and it gives Serbia access to the sea. Franz Ferdinand is the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, so he's going to be the next ruler of Austria. He actually opposed Austrian annexation of Bosnia. From what I've read of him, he seemed more enlightened than a lot of his fellow rulers in Europe. So if he would have been kept alive and gotten into power, he might have actually been more considerate towards Serbia, but we'll never know. This is important to remember. Russia is the big brother of Serbia. So Serbia is a tiny country. Austria thinks they can bully them, but Serbia can always look to Russia, their big brother, to protect them. I got a lot more information on Franz Ferdinand than you need to know. He goes down to Bosnia and Herzegovina. There's this guy, Oscar Potorjak. He's the military governor of Bosnia and Herzegovina. They watch the Austrian military do maneuvers. Franz and his wife, Sophie, go shopping in Sarajevo on Friday, June 26th. This is kind of interesting. Sophie was not royalty, so Franz Ferdinand married outside of a noble family. So their children were barred from visiting or from being kings or queens someday. When Franz and Sophie would go to state dinners, they couldn't sit together. When they would go to the opera in Vienna, they couldn't sit together. They couldn't speak to each other in public while they were at state functions. So the reason they go to Sarajevo is because even though Bosnia has been annexed by Austria, it's technically outside the empire. So they don't have to follow royal, court protocols. So he's in the place he gets assassinated just because he wanted to spend some time with his wife and not have to ignore her. So it's kind of a sad love story. Okay, anyways, Sunday, June 28th. Remember, that's kind of Serbia's national day. June 28th, he goes to Sarajevo. He visits the town hall. He's supposed to go to a museum. He's supposed to have lunch with the governor at his mansion. Okay, sorry, I'm still battling my cold. Okay, what ends up happening is he gets in his car and he drives to City Hall. There's assassins all along the way. Gavrilo Princip is one of these assassins. He's a member of the Black Hand. It's kind of a radical Serbian group. Now, here's the problem. You have this Black Hand terrorist group. They're not officially aligned with the Serbian government or military, but you've got guys in the Serbian military and in the Serbian government giving them supplies. So the Serbian military and government does have some complicity in this. There's this guy, Dragutin Dimitrijevic. He's one of the guys in the Serb military apparatus that helps out the terrorists. But what ends up happening is the Serbian military, some leaders, give the Black Hand things like bombs, pistols and ammunition, money, cyanide capsules for after the assassination they can commit suicide. So this Serbian group, the Black Hand, they get weapons into Sarajevo. Sorry, my slides are acting slow again. Now, if you look at slide 226, the Archduke and his wife get off at the train station. They drive to town hall. On that way, they get a grenade thrown at them. One of the assassins throws a grenade or a bomb at the Archduke's car. It bounces off his car and blows up on the car behind him. So there is an assassination attempt to the town hall. They get there safely, and then he gives his speech. Now, he's supposed to go visit a museum after this. He actually tells the driver that he wants to go visit somebody in the hospital who was wounded in the first car. So what happens is the driver of the car turns down this street and realizes it's the wrong turn, so he has to back up. Gavrilo Princip had gone home or started to go home. He thought, well, we missed our shot with the grenade. He gave his speech at the town hall. I'm going home. So he's walking home, and he hears this noise, and he turns around, and it's the Archduke's car who got stuck in the street and is trying to turn around. So Gavrilo Princip turns around, and he fires a pistol. He shoots the Archduke, and he shoots his wife, Sophia. Both of them die within like 30 minutes. They're taken back to Austria. They're given a funeral. They aren't allowed to be buried where the rest of the royal family is, though, because the Archduke's family was still mad that he married Sophie. Now, Austria sees this as their chance to crush Serbia. Oscar Pistorius says, "We must take the first opportunity for a destructive blow against Serbia to give the monarchy a few decades of calm." So this thing called the July Crisis happens. All the monarchs of Europe start talking to each other. Germany tells Austria, "You've got a blank check from us. You deal with Serbia however you need to. We'll back you up." Serbia gets an ultimatum from Austria. It's really harsh. Serbia asks Russia for help, their big brother. Russia tells Serbia, "Don't worry, we've got your back." Then the Germans and the Russians start talking. Kaiser Wilhelm II and Tsar Nicholas II, they're cousins. So there's these things called the Willie-Nicky telegrams. They just start talking like, how are we going to avoid war? Like, we hope we don't have to go to it. But July 28th, 1 month after the assassination, Austria declares war on Serbia. Now, here's what ends up happening. Austria declares war on Serbia. Well, that gets Russia involved because Russia's the big brother of Serbia. Well, if Russia gets involved, that gets Germany involved. Well, since Russia is threatened by Germany, France gets involved. Well, now Germany has to battle France, but to battle France, Germany has to go through Belgium. If you go through Belgium, that means you're going to pull the English into the war. So you can see how a localized conflict between Austria and Serbia ends up getting everybody dragged into war because everybody has an alliance with somebody. So this small local conflict gets out of hand and everybody ends up getting dragged into war. If you look at slide 245, I've got the dates that some of the major powers declare war. So it's just kind of a domino effect. I've heard a great story about how World War I is like a bar fight. Somebody spills their beer on you, you go get your bigger friend, they go get their bigger friend, and you keep getting your friends, and all of a sudden the whole bar is fighting. That's kind of what World War I was. The British Foreign Secretary, Sir Edward Grey, said, "The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime." That's kind of a downer quote to end it on, but things are not going to be very good in Europe for the next 4 years. So that's where I'll stop. Next time we'll actually start the fighting.